The last time I covered XDefiant on the channel, we had talked about an indefinite delay that the game was going to have. They didn't have a date when they were actually going to release, and yet there was more and more information put out on people trying to guess a release date that wasn't even told in their earnings call when they went and did the earnings meeting recently. Which makes a lot of sense because the last information that we got from Mark Rubin was that the game didn't pass certification and that they were working on some of the issues for the recertifying and submitting again, which should have been a couple of weeks' problem, which has turned into months and months of delays. Before we get into the many speculations and rumors that have been flying around about what's going on with XDefiant, my name is Gumurak, and I'd like to welcome you to the channel. For those of you that are just coming back, thank you very much for your continued support. We're at 1,003 subscribers of the goal for 2,000 for the year that we have set for ourselves this time. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscription button, hit the bell notification to know when I put up a new video. My videos are sort of sporadic at the moment because I've been putting in a lot of extra work to make sure that our family is staying afloat during the inflation period. So, videos have been coming out between a week to 2 weeks. Not very much content, but we'll get it together soon. Now let's talk about XDefiant and some of the things that we've heard recently. I'm not going to put up a bunch of fancy graphics and showing you guys the back and forth of the stories that have been going on, but there's been a major story release that has been stating that essentially there's an executive branch of people called the Boys Club within Ubisoft that is sort of running the show, but not really managing anything and just causing a bunch of chaos. I can't prove this to be true, but it sounds to be right considering the number of things that we're seeing, including a good number of us that work within the IT space or have some kind of office job. We see these kind of behaviors on a regular basis. This is not anything new. You get a group of people together that are basically the elite group of people because they have the most skill set, and they sort of shut everybody else out. Creates a pretty toxic work environment, but it's also able to be worked around. Now, I'm not going to sit here and speculate whether that's true or not. I just know that it's very possible with the things that I've seen within working in an office space myself. And if it is true, it is something that needs to be addressed by their team almost immediately. However, I do have a theory, and it is just a theory and complete speculation. There is no fact behind it whatsoever. But in the AAA gaming space, a good majority of these developers are contractors. And we see this by the constant layoffs that we see with the company that has a mix of layoffs between their employees and contractors. They never really tell you who's laid off. They just tell you that they have 45 employees laid off, or they have 100 and some odd employees laid off. And 9 times out of 10, those employees are contractors. I have an article that I'm going to link you guys down in the description down below from GameIndustry.biz. It's written by Sophie, and she has a few articles on this in which it talks about Ubisoft hit with another wave of layoffs, and it talks about 45 layoffs. Now, the layoffs are in their Asian market, which is not really a big deal, but there are other links that go on in which they had another layoff in November that said 125 Ubisoft employees were affected by layoffs. When you look at that, it says it's across their VFX and their IT divisions worldwide. And then they state it doesn't affect their production teams. But I beg to differ. You lay off that many people, the people that are left over have to pick up more work and either to get the job done in the same amount of time, which kind of speaks volumes to the things that we have seen when it comes to them stating that they are overworking their employees and created such a toxic work environment. This is not overall shocking when you see a company that's restructuring in either to save money, because the company is down 4.1%, which equals $250 million for this company. Additionally to that, when you shift focus to another person doing the same job, sometimes you get things that are a little bit sloppy, which would greatly make sense of their netcode at this point, because that is the main thing that everybody has complained about in almost every single test. Now, there has been rumors lately that the game is going to release on April 15th, and that there is going to be a playtest on April 12th and 13th, and the time frames are kind of sketchy, and these are leaks, obviously, so there's nothing saying that for sure. For me, it feels like the company is finally catching heat from the gaming industry and the number of people that are putting out videos on the topic, so they might throw out another playtest and either to see if the game is stable enough to give us the one thing that we've always asked to not have, which is to release a game that is a buggy mess and have them fix it along the way. But it looks like that they don't have an option anymore. They were trying to avoid this a great deal by listening to our feedback, and our feedback was telling them to release a completed title instead of releasing a buggy title that they fixed along the way. But that obviously is not going to work for their time frame anymore. So if the rumors are true, we're going to get a playtest and then a release on the 15th, and then they'll fix whatever problems they have along the way at that time. I think it's just going to cause a compounding problem, and we're going to see large netcode issues upon release, which is pretty normal for today's games anytime they do release, because it costs an extreme amount of money for the servers, so they shoot low and then raise their numbers up like Helldivers did, in either to meet the demand, rather than shooting high, spending the money, and not utilizing the space. So what we're looking at here is you cannot have your cake and eat it too type of scenario. And that's what we're going to see throughout the release of this title. There are going to be many things that the company wants to do with this title that it's not going to make it or hit the chopping block, because they spend too much time trying to ride the same wave as COD instead of building their own IP. They believe that they're building their own IP by using the same characters that they have throughout the Tom Clancy franchise, which they have dropped the name off of. But the reality is that nobody really wants another COD shooter. We want something new and refreshing that is that company's take on it, so that the people can enjoy the game based off of it being an Ubisoft game and what Ubisoft thinks a shooter should be. If people wanted COD, they would go and play COD. It's not like COD or Warzone is very difficult to get a hold of, especially since they're charging AAA prices for them, but at least Warzone is free. So one way or another, if they wanted to play COD, they could pay for it or they could play it for free, which are the same options that you're going to have when it comes to XDefiant, because the game is in fact actually free to play. But there's a founder pack that they believe that they're going to be selling to people on the day that they release the game. Or at least that is what we have heard so far when it comes to the microtransactions that they're going to have available for the game. Obviously, you'll have your standard skins and things of that nature, but supposedly there's also a founder's pack in either to make up for the loss in development costs that they have. How much truth there is to that, only time will tell, and that depends if they actually release the fucking game or not. I was never really attached to XDefiant, but I wanted it to succeed because, as a gamer, I want other gamers to have options. And this certainly was looking like a great option for people to have. Sadly though, my prediction is if the game does release on April 15th, and it does in fact have a giant buggy mess that's supposed to be involved with it, then I think it will absolutely kill the title, which is what we see across the board on every one of these types of games. If Ubisoft wants this game to succeed, they need to stop holding back and stop giving the black and white responses that we see, and just tell us what the actual delays are flat outright, and what's going on with the title and when we can expect to see it. Now, that does have some backwards implications to it, because when you have too much transparency, people start to wonder things about what's going on. The only thing I can say is if there is any truth to the rumors of a boys club or an elite group of actual employees that are making a hell of a life for your contractors or your developers that are hired directly to the company and creating a toxic work environment, that shit needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately. Even though it would affect a great number of people that are involved, these people should be fired or at least suspended without pay until an investigation happens, and put some actual scrum masters or project managers in place that can get the job done with the contractors and developers that you have, and get the project rolling as opposed to constantly fighting an HR battle. Well, that's my little rant when it comes to the game and where they think they're going to go with it or what we're going to see. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'm sorry for the lack of editing. This week's been rather rough when it comes to the hours and everything that's been working. Remember to tell your loved ones that you love them often. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.